Have you ever wanted to invest in the US stock market, but you live outside the US, maybe in Asia, Africa, UAE, or Australia? Or you're an expat and moved to another country and not quite sure exactly how? Well, on today's episode, I'll be giving you the steps on exactly how to do that. So stay locked in. You don't have to wait until you reach financial independence to start enjoying your life. You can do that much earlier and start living a life that you love and that's true to you. Welcome to Freedom Before FIRE. Using FIRE and life design techniques, we help you create freedom on your way to FIRE instead of waiting until you're retired to do the things that light you up. I'm your host Greg, a FIRE movement and life design enthusiast. If you're itching to get freedom now, then let's do this. Hello my friend and welcome back to another episode. I'm still a bit sniffly and bunged up, so apologies if it sounds like I'm holding my nose throughout this whole episode, but I really want to get my content out there. I think my throat is only slightly better today. I love using old school remedies when I'm ill, like lemon and ginger tea, gargling warm salt water. You know, the kind of stuff that Asian grandparents always teach us. So in the Philippines, we have this savory rice porridge dish called lugao, which is kind of like Chinese congee. Anyway, it's packed with lots of ginger, green onions, garlic, and it really helps you when you're ill. Right, so let's get on with the show. So one of the key levers to reaching your FI goal is to invest your hard-saved money and to make your money work for you. So my favorite way to do this is to invest in the stock market, particularly low-cost index funds, which is basically buying portions of multiple stocks. If you read a lot of FIRE blogs in US, you'll probably hear a lot about investing in the S&P 500 or the US total stock market. On the other hand, if the blogs are from Europe, then you'll likely hear about total world stocks or all world ETFs. Mainly because companies on these indexes are massive global companies like Amazon, Facebook, Google, Coca-Cola, Netflix and companies like that. And the awesome thing is, you'll be able to access them and be part owners of them as well. And usually companies on these indexes do really well and their value over time increases, meaning your investment value increases too. So you might be asking, who creates these index funds? So companies like Vanguard and Fidelity are the ones who create these type of funds. Most FIRE enthusiasts like myself swear by Vanguard, who are fund investment managers and have a range of mutual funds and ETFs which you can invest in. By the way, in case you didn't know, ETFs are exchange traded funds. Basically means you can easily buy them like a normal stock on the market, and the bonus is that it lets you buy multiple stocks instead of just one. Now, if you happen to live in the countries where Vanguard has a base, like for example US or UK, it's fairly straightforward to invest in those type of stocks. You can actually open up accounts with Vanguard directly. Now, the problem arises if you live outside of US or UK as a foreign national, for example from the Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, or you move to another country as an expat like me. Typically, in this scenario, you won't be able to open up a direct account with Vanguard if you're not a resident in the country they're based in. So as you can see, this becomes a barrier if you want to pursue or continue your FIRE journey. So today, we'll delve into how exactly you can invest in US stocks from outside the US, even if you're not a US citizen. So being in the FI world, you've probably heard the acronyms VTSAX, VTI, VOO. Those are acronyms or ticker symbols for the various Vanguard funds. See, I'm a fan of the set it and forget it long-term strategy instead of stock picking. So instead of picking and choosing individual stocks, why not just invest in the whole market, then sit back and let your earnings compound over time? Or some call it VTI and chill. A little inside joke for index fund nerds like me. So the Vanguard VTI ETF is actually my favorite index fund, also known as the US Total Stock Market Index Fund. It currently represents 3,674 companies in the whole US stock market and includes known brands like Microsoft, Apple, Tesla, MasterCard, Johnson & Johnson, and the list goes on. Okay, so if you wanted to invest in VTI, for example, you can do so in 5 steps, or if it's any other US-based ETF or mutual fund that you're interested in. So to explain the process, I'll use a train and some train stations as a visual example. So imagine if you want to invest and you're on a train which has 5 train stations, or stops as we call it in UK. Each stop is linked together by train tracks. So each station or stop represents each piece of the US stock investment puzzle. Okay, so I'll quickly run through the 5 stops now and then we'll go into more detail after. So stop 1 is your bank. This is where you keep your money, your savings, etc. Stop number 2 is your currency changer, as you'll need to change currency from your local money if you want to purchase USD-based stocks. Now, stop number 3 is your international broker. Companies like Saxo, Schwab, and Interactive Brokers are some established international brokers. My favorite is Interactive Brokers, or IB for short, and it's what I use, so I'll use that as an example on today's episode. Now, stop number 4 is the fund manager. As I mentioned earlier, companies like Vanguard or Fidelity have created these funds, and as for myself, I'm a massive fan of Vanguard, so we'll use that today as an example. And then stop number 5 is the stock or index fund itself, so VTI in this scenario. So just a quick reminder, the main goal for you is to get to stop number 3, which is putting money in your international broker account. Because the awesome thing is, you only need to travel to stop 3. Your international broker will go to train stops 4 and 5 on your behalf, because that's their job. How cool is that? Alright, so let's go through the stops in more detail. So stop number 1 is your local bank in whatever country you're based. Obviously, you'll have your local currency there, whether that's Philippine pesos, dirhams if you're in the UAE, Malaysian ringgit, or whatever currency you get your salary in. So this is where you keep your income or savings to invest in. So stop number 2 is your currency changer. So ultimately, you need to get your money to your broker, and the stocks you want to buy are in US dollars. So you need to fund your brokerage account with USD. International brokers can usually be funded with different currencies, but it's usually the larger ones. Like, for example, IB can be funded with Australian dollars, British pounds, Canadian dollars, euros, HK dollars, Japanese yen, New Zealand dollars, Singapore dollars, and of course USD. So if your local bank doesn't have these currencies, you'll need to get your money changed. So there are a number of ways out there to get your money changed into USD. Here are just some examples. So option A, you can get your bank to change your local money into USD and then wire transfer it to your international broker. But banks usually charge a higher exchange rate. Option B, you can open up a separate USD account, perhaps in the same bank or a different bank, and then get your money changed from a local money changer, which usually has more competitive rates. And then you could wire transfer it to your broker using that USD account. So option C is using an online exchange house like Wise. If you have a Wise account in your local currency, I believe they can change the currency for you when sending to Interactive Brokers. Wise and IB have officially partnered up, making it easier to do that. Okay, so once your money is changed, we go to stop 3, which is called funding your brokerage account. So brokers also need a bank to hold their money. So IB, for example, is based in US, so we need to transfer internationally to a US bank. So once you've funded your account, you can now request your broker to buy the stock you wanted. So brokers like IB have access to a host of index funds, and most of the Vanguard ones we in the FIRE community love. So you can request for them to buy units of VTI, so they will go to your fund manager in stop 4, and then they will get the units for you at stop 5. So at the time of this recording, 1 unit of VTI currently sits around 260 USD, give or take. Now just remember, 1 unit on VTI is still investing in over 3,000 companies in the US total stock market. Now this amount is continually changing, and that's down as well as up. So here's the power of the stock market. When I was first investing in VTI a few years back, the cost of a unit was around 150 USD. And of course, as I mentioned, the value of stocks can go up and down, and it can even go lower than 150. And just remember, you only lose out when you sell it, i.e. that's if you sell it for less than you bought it. But if you could hold your nerve through a slump, hopefully the value of your stock will increase. And that's what we hope for over time. Now, if we took a step back and looked at the bigger picture, the more we travel between stops 1 and 3, the more you'll accumulate. This is basically what you'll be doing in your accumulation phase every month, or however regular you want to invest. And just remember, each time you go to your broker, you're investing in your freedom. Okay, so that's the overall principle of investing in US stocks. So some parts might be slightly different depending on which country you're based. But that's what I do to invest in the US stock market, and I'm currently living in the Philippines in Southeast Asia. Alright, so there are a few watch outs that I want to mention. The first one is fees. Just remember, there will be fees for things in the process, and the amount depends on the bank or broker. The biggest fee being international wire transfers. Banks in the Philippines, for example, can charge anything from $20 to $40 for each wire transfer. Another fee to be mindful of is broker fees. So check out all the fees the broker will charge you. Interactive Brokers, for example, charges a small commission for every trade depending on the trade value. One thing to watch out for is currency fluctuations. Of course, currency exchange rates fluctuate all the time. They could fluctuate in your favor or against. But if you don't have a choice and you want to continue investing, it's just a bullet we have to bite, unfortunately. Another thing to note is that companies along the different stops might change their rules, their fees, or even just shut down altogether. So for example, in my years of investing, I've had to change brokers. I've had to change brokers from a company called TD Ameritrade before to Interactive Brokers. So TDA was bought out by Schwab, and basically during that time they changed their rules and only allowed trading in certain countries. Unfortunately, Philippines was one of those countries that wasn't on the good boy list. So I had to change brokers and move my stocks to IB. Fortunately, Philippines are still in IB's good book, so I'm happy with that. So anyway, if you think of my train analogy, the stops might not change, but the companies and rules in those companies at each stage might. So just have a plan B in case you do get thrown a curveball. Alright, so there you have it. That's how to invest in US stocks if you're living abroad. There are of course loads of other factors to consider, like which US stocks to choose, should I go mutual funds or ETFs, the different types of brokers. For example, there are other ones out there like GoTrade, eToro. How about taxes, tax treaties, and where stocks are domiciled? But this episode is mainly an overview just so that you can get going. But please feel free to email me if you do have specific questions. Alright, so let's do a quick recap, shall we? Okay, so we talked about using a train and train stations to visualize the journey to buy US stocks. So on this train line, we had 5 stops. Stop number 1 was your bank, where you keep your money, your salary and savings, as you do need capital to invest. And then stop number 2 is your currency changer, as we need to change our local currency to purchase USD-based stocks. And then stop number 3 is your international broker. For example, Interactive Brokers, Saxo, Schwab. And as I mentioned, Interactive Brokers is one of my favorites, and it's what I use as an example today. Stop number 4 is your fund manager, so companies like Vanguard or Fidelity. They're the ones that created these index funds. And then stop number 5 is the stock index fund itself. So in today's example, we used VTI. And so the main goal is to get to stop number 3 because, as mentioned, your broker will go to stops 4 and 5 on your behalf. You just need to keep going between stops 1 to 3 as often as you can. The more trips you make between stops 1 and 3, the more freedom you'll unlock for yourself and go up the money stages, as I talked about in episode number 7. If you think this episode would help a friend, please don't hesitate to share it with them. The show notes can be found at freedombeforefi.substack.com. If you have a question or want to connect, feel free to send me an email at freedombeforefi@proton.me. That's freedombeforefi@proton.me. If you found this show useful and want to be notified of future episodes, you can follow us on Spotify or Apple via the show's main page or on whatever app you're using right now. And lastly, if you've just learned one good thing that will help you in your journey and you want to help us out here, please do leave a 5-star rating on your podcast player app. If you're using Apple Podcasts, you can even leave a nice review by scrolling to the bottom of the podcast page. That would help us out loads. All right, so that's me for today. I hope you have an awesome week ahead. And as always, practice gratitude, live life by your design, and do things that make you smile. You got this.